Two defendants are suing ABC, obviously owned by the Walt Disney Company, over vaccine mandate firings. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is Mr. Ron Coleman, a real-life lawyer working for the Dillon Law Group, and of course, the host of the immeasurable Ron Coleman Coleman Nation podcast. I'm so,
how you doing?
So very pleased to have you here today. Yes, are you doing well?
Thank God. Yes, it's very exciting around here. We're making a wedding. My youngest son is being married Monday night to a lovely young lady. Thank you. So that makes 3 out of 4, 1 to go, 1 more on the shelf, and we expect very high demand for this boy. Thank you.
That's wonderful. We expect great things from you. That's fantastic. So we're talking today about this story out of Variety. We talked about this a little bit yesterday on the channel. Culture Casino and myself speculated on this, but I wanted to get your opinion here. ABC faces trial over General Hospital COVID vaccination wrongful termination lawsuit. There's a lot of little information here that I would expect that Variety would have a generally General Hospital, a generally accepted opinion here. But I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if you've had a chance to read the actual decision, to help fill us in on some of the details on what we should be looking for to see whether or not this is the real deal here.
Well, I don't know how real the real deal is. I do think there are some significant aspects to this decision. Yes, I have looked at it. So in this case, as you discussed in your video, ABC and Disney were refused in their attempt to dismiss a case brought by James and Tim Wall, W-H-A-L, like the shaver, who are crew members on General Hospital, the long-running soap opera, on the grounds of religious discrimination for refusing to take the COVID-19 jab. They were fired for refusing to take it, even though they did everything that they were supposed to have done in order to obtain a religious exemption. The judge ruled that it was not a decision for him to make on a summary judgment motion whether or not two things had happened. One was whether the Walls were being religiously sincere in their beliefs with respect to the COVID vaccination, and whether or not ABC was acting reasonably in refusing to let them go to work without the vaccination in light of the nature of their work, which depends on the factual specifics of how close in contact they are with other people, what the testing protocols were, and other factors. So the reason this is significant, Jonas, is not because it is a determination that these regulations were unreasonable, that they were wrong. I don't think that's ever going to happen in a California court, or probably too many other courts. And I did a lot of this litigation in the moment, and it was disastrous how judges were just rolling over for this. Mm-hmm. But what it does stand for is that judges are, at least one judge is able to stand far enough away now from the situation in a way that I think they weren't doing 3 years ago, and saying, let's consider the facts and let's look at the science. That's something that courts manifestly refused to do during the pandemic.
So if I can try to bounce this back to you in normal person talk as opposed to legal talk here, I do think you've been very clear, but I want to lower the.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here. Yes, let's bring it down to junior high school.
So it sounds like in this case they were trying for a religious exemption, and that ABC did not do anything to accommodate that religious exemption. And I do believe they have a requirement on some level to at least attempt to accommodate a religious exemption when it's there.
That's right. And apparently it was that they set up the obstacle course, and then after the father and sons walls had traversed the obstacle course, ABC did what is pretty common in the religious exemption category and just blew it off. Whether you believe that's there are three possible reasons for that, other than they made a legitimate conclusion. One reason is they're contemptuous of the idea of anyone being given any discretion over their lives because of mere religion. Another one is that they didn't believe that there was really a religious exemption or religious objection, which puts ABC in a very awkward position and also puts the court in an awkward position. Courts generally don't like to be in the position of measuring someone's religious sincerity, but that is going to be an issue here. And the third possibility is that they simply weren't going to give exemptions to anyone for any reason because they were completely bought into the cult thinking about COVID.
Yes. Well, one thing that appears to be under consideration here is that they are under the opinion that those who were fully vaccinated, under the prevalent opinion of the time, that the vaccinations, and it's actually gene therapy. Yes, I understand for
I'm
those
not
in
going
the
there.
comments who are,
But yes,
whatever.
I'm sure your comments are going to get, yeah, right.
Because this is a contentious topic. The defendant's own evidence suggests that vaccines were highly effective and gives rise to a triable issue where the plaintiffs posed an undue risk under these circumstances. So, if ABC was under the impression that the vaccines were highly effective, then what danger did these people pose if everyone who was concerned about the COVID vaccine were protected in some way? So this is a detail that, of course, I don't think that this is the trial of the COVID vaccine, as in this is the COVID vaccine and its effectiveness being put on trial. It is, however, a snapshot, if I'm reading this correctly, of how it was perceived then and the evidence of the case for ABC at the time that they made this decision, whether or not they were correct. So it doesn't matter today how we view these things. It matters when they were fired. It sounds like in 2021. Is that a reasonable assessment?
Yes. I mean, one thing I would never expect ABC to do, given their ownership and given the culture, is to say, well, actually, it turns out that the vaccines weren't effective, even though vaccine proponents ultimately admitted that they weren't effective at stopping the spread and that therefore this should not have been a factor at the time. You can't actually say that. That's simply really still not an utterable formulation. It's so to some extent what it is a trial of the culture as represented by major corporate thinking, and which took the position that objecting to the vaccine is simply, as well as Arnold said, F your freedoms.
Yes,
right?
he did. In a very thick Austrian accent.
That's right. And you're right. And he's a product of that culture. Choose which one of the
Yes.
I'm referring to. I think that's what's going to be interesting. And in fact, I would be surprised if it does go to trial. I think at this point, a check gets written.
Which is, of course, disappointing, because the thing that I want to ask is, if this did go to trial and it's in, I think, the 11th Circuit, or maybe I'm reading that incorrectly.
It is in California State Court.
Okay.
So if it had been in federal court, it would have gone to the 9th Circuit, which is not going to be a great circuit for a plaintiff in this kind of case. It's a California State Court, and the California State Courts are just plain awful. But there you can get a little bit of justice going county by county. And I'm not a California lawyer, but these claims were brought under California law, which is part of the reason that they're surviving.
So this would not set precedent for anywhere except the state of California if it did go to trial and go in their favor.
If it were to go to trial and go to their favor, first of all, a trial court, a jury verdict almost in and of itself doesn't set precedent. This decision is a sort of precedent, but it isn't really binding on any court except this court itself. Even other state courts of California don't have to defer to this decision. But it will be influential because it is a state court in California, which is one of the most influential courts in the states in the country in terms of law.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll be watching this with bated breath. Is there any additional insight that you want to throw in here before we wrap things up?
No, I think we nailed it. I mean, I do. I think you're right when you say that this is not, the benchmark. This is not the beginning of the end. I think, frankly, it's making news because
because everyone is angry about this issue on one side or another.
Right. I mean, I do think it is worth noting that Disney and ABC, Disney/ABC, are in the position now of having to defend a decision that was never rational and never reasonable, but which was the governing culture of the time. So to some extent, it would be good if this could go on trial and we could hear how people rationalized the decisions that were being made then. I mean, it's pretty clear to me, not because I know anyone, not because I'm familiar with the facts firsthand, but having lived through it as we all did, there was in the corporate world and in a lot of other cultures simply intolerance for anyone who refused to take the vaccine, regardless of the facts, regardless of questions that people might have had, efficacy, rationale. Then again, you don't know what the jury pool might think, and that's one more reason that the case should be is extremely likely to settle, because getting past the judge on a motion for summary judgment is one thing, but getting a judgment from a jury, any one of whom could be COVID cultists still, and there are a lot of them out there. I was in California just last week, and
California, yes,
people are walking around with masks in the outdoors, with the same levels of lunacy that they were in 2020, 2021.
So of all the trials and all of the lawsuits that we are following here for the Walt Disney Company recently, this EEOC complaint, which is not yet a lawsuit, but it is a complaint that must be addressed. Of course, the Gina Carano lawsuit, the fact that so many companies right now are being sued over their race-based hiring practices. That sounds redundant, but there are more lawsuits yet still based off of that. A class action lawsuit, which includes all female employees of the Walt Disney Company. It seems like this might be one where it has a potential to go away. So Disney is probably going to take advantage of that. Does that sound reasonable?
I would think so. Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would go with that.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Ron. Guys, if you want to learn as much as we get to learn from Ron Coleman, please go over to the Coleman Nation podcast. He has interesting people on there all the time, including he's had Andrew from The Legal Mindset on there, Valiant Renegade, and many more people that I'm sure you can't even fathom how interesting they are. And the fact that they get to talk to Ron is, I'm sure, fascinating on a regular basis. We're going to link his channel down below. And thank you so much for being here. Guys, like this video if you like this video. If you know someone who is interested in this case in particular, maybe share it out to them on social media. And of course, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.